Welcome to Legends of Grayskull, the podcast that dives deep into the mythology of Masters of the Universe, with your hosts Matthew Dooch and Shawn Scavana. News, reviews, remasterings and more are just ahead on Legends of Grayskull.
Hello everybody and welcome to Legends of Grayskull, the fan podcast where we discuss the history, the mystery, the magic and mythology of He-Man, She-Ra, Eternia, Etheria, Nordor, Primus, New Adventures, Old Adventures, Ladybird, UK Annuals, Mini-Comic, Comics, anything and everything you can think of with a He-Man, She-Ra, Masters of the Universe, Princess of Power, that Netflix logo. Shawn, where are we headed tonight?
We're headed to somewhere spooky, Matt. We're headed to the land of the dead.
The land of the dead! That's right, guys. It is our Revelation breakdown. We are headed straight to the land of the dead, courtesy of Scareglow himself. But before we get there, we gotta do some catch-up here. Because I thought about something on our previous episodes. So, as most of you know, who have already listened to our first three Revelation breakdown episodes. And I'm not recapping, so if you haven't seen them, pause this, go watch it. If you haven't seen the Netflix show, I really don't know what you're doing here. Pause this, go watch the Netflix show, then watch our first three episodes, then watch this. We'll wait. We'll be right here. Excuse me. But we have been keeping a body count. So far on our body count, we have Mossman, He-Man, and Skeletor. So we're up to 3 right now.
3.
But rewatching it for, I don't even know now, 9th, 10th time, Faker gets cut in half by Man-at-Arms laser. Is that a body count? Right? And on that same note, Blast Attack ends up blowing up. And we haven't seen him again.
Yeah, that's true.
Do the robots count as body counts, or are they too easily brought back? And specifically those two, because that's where we're at in the journey. Okay, don't let anything else cloud your judgment.
Here's my thought on it, and okay. I could be wrong. I look at the robots as characters, whether they're robotic or they're human, because if they have a figure dedicated to them, that implies they are a force in the line somewhere. You know, this is a character, whether it's robotic or whether it's human. So I would say it probably isn't a bad idea to count them in there, because Blast Attack was a figure, and so was Faker, and they're even putting the Faker figure into the Masterverse line. So I'm just saying, I mean, life is one thing, AI is a different thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. To me, how much is Faker and Blast Attack? How sentient are they? That's my question.
Blast Attack was scared to death of blowing up. Every time he got close, he'd have to hit the buttons to deactivate, and he even went, because he knew what was going to happen. So I count that, yes. I would say yes, because he did not want to blow up. Therefore, him blowing up actually was against what he wanted to have happen to himself.
So Blast Attack is going on the list. Okay. What about Faker?
And then Faker...
I mean, he didn't even talk.
He did not talk.
He was very, obviously, I mean, T-1000. I mean, he was very much a T-1000 with the, reattaching and everything. So... Sure. I mean... the same thing at the end of Terminator 2. Do you think of the T-1000 as having died?
I think of him as having been destroyed, not dying necessarily. And in the case of Faker, the only thing, here's kind of the way I judge that one. Faker, when he's about to grab the sorceress, smiles. So there is an implication he's enjoying the fact that he gets to do what he's about to do.
This programming. Okay.
And I almost feel like that puts him in a different level than like if you think of like you said, T-1000 or even T-800.
Yeah.
You don't see Schwarzenegger or Robert Patrick really having smiles. They're very stone-faced. They're following their programming. Him having that smile was an emotional response to this is a moment I can take advantage of. So that's kind of how I judge it, at least.
All right. You have convinced me. We are adding them posthumously to the list. So our actual body count right now is at 5. We have 5 characters that have bit the dust. 2 of those, in my opinion, are very easily repaired. So,
such a bloodthirsty show.
Such a bloodthirsty 5 deaths in 3 episodes. I hate to see what's coming up here. So, as we said, we are jumping in today into episode 4, Land of the Dead. This was written by Tim Sheridan and once again directed by Adam Canaro and Patrick Stannard. Adam, I apologize, I probably said your last name 5 different ways in 4 episodes. And this is now available to stream exclusively on Netflix. So, this opens up right where we left off. So last episode we did leave off with the black pillar rising up and then descending a staircase into darkness. That's our heroes Tila, Andra, Orko, Beastman, and Evil Lyn. And Roboto.
And Roboto, yeah.
Me and my robots, whatever. They're disposable. They're a dime a dozen. And it opens right up. I mean, they descended into darkness. This one opens up with Tila lighting a flare so that they can see where they are. And as they're exploring this cavern they find themselves in, Orko pulls out an old Trollin nursery rhyme. Which, thank God I didn't get raised by Trollins. Here we go. I actually got this. I use closed captioning. I've got it all.
Okay.
You cannot make your living in the land of the dead, my dear. The only wealth you'll need to bring is the currency of fear. Flee before your mind goes mad. Trust not what Subternia shows. Terror fuels the fires of hell, whose lord is called Scareglow.
That's badass. It would have given me nightmares, but it's badass.
Yeah, it's. I mean, really, it's in tradition with nursery rhymes. Most of you go to those old nursery stories, they actually have a pretty dark twist originally.
Yeah,
Hansel and Gretel and Brothers Grimm. My big thing though is that it's a Trollin nursery rhyme about Subternia. So that means Subternia is a separate plane of existence, basically, that runs throughout all the planets?
That's a good question. I haven't even thought of that because, like, that didn't even register when I've watched it, and I haven't watched it 9 times yet, unfortunately. I've watched it probably 3 or 4 by now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that is... Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think of, and this is a really quick thing, was in the first prequel comic book, we have that shot of Grayskull with the ore, and the Trollins are with him as he's about to fashion it into the power sword.
Okay. Yeah.
The ore he got from Subternia, which, being the case, did they go with him? And did they start that?
Or just heard it from the stories. I mean, they didn't
heard it from
it.
They heard it from him.
He got the ore from Scareglow.
Yeah.
So, okay. No, I'm good. So then they end up going back to Tralla, and talk about this crazy place they found on Eternia. Like, dude, you do not want to go. If you ever wind up getting sucked through a dimensional portal to Eternia, do not go there.
Exactly.
I like it. That makes perfect sense. Thank you, because that was... I mean, I was going off the idea, like, because they do say later that Subternia has, like, you know, think of it like a wall and this and that. I'm like, okay, maybe it is kind of all these planes of existence, but I like that better. And even coming up in an episode, even Grayskull talks in the series about trolling mages. So, okay, yep, that works for me.
All right.
So, and this episode just hits the ground running. I mean, there's no exposition. This is all we get, and the next thing you know, all of a sudden, Tila is all by herself. Everybody's gone. Yep. You find Orko and Evelyn get sent to Trala, they discover. All of a sudden, we're with them. It's bright, it's sunny, birds are flying. Orko pulls a classic Orko moment where he tries to create a giant magnifying glass and like a seeking spell to find his comrades. I know, it's great. And it does like the ant effect and just torches these birds in their nest.
I know. More death count right there. The birds.
I'm not putting the birds on the death toll. They weren't even real.
That's true, but it was awesome. It's just one more. It's like, you know, Orko didn't get he didn't levitate eggs and drop them on Duncan. Instead, he just kills a bunch of birds, even though they are a hallucination, basically.
Yep. And then then you've got Tila's alone. Orko and Evelyn wind up on Trala, and then Andra, Beastman, and Roboto are on this creepy, deserted battlefield with all these skeletons and weapons. Like, they're, you know, just looking post-apocalyptic after a great war. It's awesome. I love just the atmosphere in this episode, especially bouncing back and forth between, you know, Tila and pretty much catacombs, them on this creepy battlefield, and then Orko and Evelyn are in the bright and sunny Trala. You know, it's just like, it's great. So a Beastman is going ape shit over losing track of Evelyn. I mean, he's freaking out, and I've lost my mistress. Where is she? She was right in front of me. I mean, he is really losing mind. Like, this is all I've got left. I've already lost Skeletor. He was my master. Now I've got Evelyn. I lost her too. Like, this isn't happening to me. I mean, he is. I'm telling you, we talked about earlier, they have definitely played up his savage henchman. Like, he needs he needs somebody to lead him.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the case of this scene in particular, there have been, I have heard people going, well, you know, the fire bats and all this stuff that they, you know, it's like it played on maybe something he's a little scared of. But I think the real fear in this moment is actually, it's not what he faces here. It's the fact she's gone.
Right.
And that's, it elevates what he's going through even harder than everybody else in that group in particular.
And so they're surveying, you know, and it's pretty cool because right off the bat, like, Evelyn says it's an illusion. Andra says, hey, this is just an illusion. They're still here. Like, I like that we're not playing... I mean, Orko did his rhyme. It tells you right in the rhyme, you know, trust not what Subternia shows. And I like that they made all of our group smart enough that you don't have the guy going, oh my god, this is real. Like, they all realize this is an illusion. I thought that was really nice because most of the time in this situation, a show is going to play it up like, oh no, it might be real. And everyone's just like, no, this is an illusion. You know?
Agreed. I mean, yeah.
They're still afraid, but at least they're not acting dumb, I guess, is what I'm appreciating.
Yeah, they have their wits about them. And what I like about this, actually, because, that is a huge trope, and it's very cliche with what you were talking about. In this case, it's not so much them guessing where they are isn't real. It's more them coming to terms with what they're going through and facing that fear in this and coming up with solutions to fight that fear. rather than worrying about like you said, part A would be, is this real? We already got rid of that. So now we're on part B, C, and D throughout the rest of the episode, which I actually enjoyed, because I'm really not a fan of those episodes where it's almost the equivalent of when there's two people and one of them is like, oh, well, this person's actually like a shapeshifter, and they're like, which one's the real one? And I hate those. And it's the same thing like you were talking about. It's like, yeah, it would take half the episode for them to realize, oh, it's not real. Thank God we're over that.
It's all an illusion. It's like,
exactly.
No, we know we're good. However, it seems that these illusions can still hurt us, so we need to do something. I mean, there is a real chance that they're gonna get hurt. They're gonna get killed. So the stakes are real, but what they're seeing isn't. And where you've got shadow beasts appearing on the ridge above Andra, Beastman, and Roboto, and I like that they're shadow beasts. They look a little skinnier. They're a little different, and they make the comment. They go, "Hey, these are unlike any shadow beasts that we've ever seen." I like that because they are very different. These shadow beasts from our traditional, above ground shadow beasts. These are very much creations of Scareglow to serve him, and they've got some extra powers. But I like that they took a second to go, hey, look, we know these aren't your typical shadow beasts, and we're recognizing that,
Yeah, agreed.
So then we cut back, as those three are preparing for a fight, we cut back to Tila, and she comes face to face for the first time in animated form to the Master of Fear, the evil ghost of Skeletor, Scareglow. And one of the most interesting things about this is his dialogue when he meets Tila. It kind of strokes up that old debate of, is he the ghost of a deceased Skeletor, or is he a ghost who works for Skeletor?
Yeah.
I mean, because he's coming out and Tila sees a skull face. She's like, Skeletor? And he says, not quite, but I remember that name. It's like, all right, there's a lot of stuff he says, that it's kind of ambiguous. Again, is he saying he knows of Skeletor, or he's saying he once was Skeletor?
Yeah, and I actually, when he did that, I liked that they left it open-ended, because since that's been a debate for 30 some years at this point, it is kind of nice that they don't just go, this is what it is. Like classics just went, this is who he is.
That's who he is.
Versus this, I kind of dig the idea that, you let your mind paint that picture. You paint that story of maybe it is Skeletor, and after he dies, he's relegated there because of what he's done. And then he has to feed off of the fear, which is what he's so used to causing havoc, destruction, fear.
Yeah.
But, the other part of me is like, I still like the idea that he's his own person, because that makes it a little more interesting to me in the mythology. Like, it is kind of like Skeletor's dead. But then the element of, knowing he moves to a different plane of existence, there's an element of like, oh. So it's like you're giving me a second Skeletor character versus it being his own person. That's how I've been with it for a while.
No, but I agree. I like the own character better, but it was a nice nod here where they're like, hey, look, we're not going to settle the debate in this game.
No.
We're just going to, we're going to kind of play into it, ambiguously word it, just like that card back in 1987 that, but he looks awesome. He's voiced impeccably. And, one of the interesting thing is adding to that, so I had the closed captioning on this last time through. And in the beginning nursery rhyme that Orko says, at the end of there, Orko, there's a trail off when Orko says it. when he says the whose lord is called Scareglow, and he kind of trails off. In the closed captioning, it reads as whose lord is SKEL dash 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 as a trail off.
Oh.
So I don't know, and I don't know how Netflix does their subtitles, and that was just this afternoon, so I did not have time to research into it. If they go, honestly, I don't know how normally subtitles. I know subtitles are known for their mistakes, obviously. So I don't know if that's just someone heard it wrong or someone saw Scareglow later on. They're like, oh, that's Skeletor. I don't know. But the closed caption clearly goes SKEL and then the trail off. And not, but Orko clearly says Scare Glow.
Mm-hmm.
He may not finish it perfectly, but he definitely says it. So, again, that's a little point that doesn't help the debate.
Yeah, and but the thing for me is the rhyme doesn't work with Skeletor. It works with Scareglow because of how the previous stanza or whatever you want to call it, or the line reads or whatever. But that's interesting. Just from maybe they're trying to do that where the ambiguity even through that to make the debate become alive again amongst the fans who weren't there at the party originally and the old school people who we kind of figured we know what's what.
About it.
But let's it's like we don't have enough to fight about. Let's throw one more thing in there.
But yeah. On to the story. Yes, that debate's not settled here. It won't be probably. Well, I mean, I guess there is a chance it comes back around again, but we'll get to that. So basically, Scareglow tells Tila he's got the dark half of the power sword. It was made from the ore of Subternia. When it split, it came back here. He's got it. She wants it. He calls her out. He's like, I can tell you're angry. That anger is only masking your fear. It's the old dark side thing. Anger leads to fear, leads to the dark side. He's like, you're not angry. You're afraid. I can, Cringer called her out earlier. Scareglow's calling her out. He says, and he tells her, I need that fear. He lives off of these people coming down, and he just drains their fear, or he feeds off of it.
Yeah.
And so they make a bargain. He says she has to face her greatest fears. If she survives, she can take the half of the sword and go. But the only other option is she succumbs to her fear and she is consumed and lives in Subternia forever. Very standard crossroad demons bargain. I mean, that's...
Yep.
I would expect no less.
No.
So she agrees, and so she ends up being dropped into the well of darkness to start her trial. And this whole scene with Scareglow and Tila going back and forth with the bargain and everything, him calling her out, I loved it. It's everything that we've been speculating up to this point, and Scareglow just lays it all out. He's like, you were just a scared little girl on the inside. You don't know how to handle what you've been through, and that's just leading to fear. And that whole animation with him holding her, telepathically above the well before dropping her in, and the cut to black. I mean, it just wonderfully animated episode. This one through and throughout.
Definitely, yeah. Honestly, the thing that I loved a lot about this one in particular, from an animation standpoint, was you could tell there was a lot of care given to the fact that Powerhouse was the first animation company to do Scareglow. Yeah. When you look at him in this episode, he has this creepy regalness that I was hoping they could capture, and they did it even better than I would have imagined. So the minute he shows up, he pretty much, for me at least watching this episode, anytime he's on the screen, he commands the attention on the screen because they did such an amazing job with that character.
Oh yeah, for sure. He is the ruler of his world. That's for sure. So then we cut back to Orko and Evelyn. They're at the Academy of Magic. They headed inside to try and find some answers. The spell spring is there. He says it's a source of all the magic on Trala, and it is dry. Orko fears that there is no magic left on Trala. They don't see anybody, and while he knows it's an illusion, he worries that it's showing him that this is actually happening. Like it's an illusion, but it could actually be showing. And what if he's the last Trollan?
Yeah.
And it's going along with what the sorcerer said. Even if this hasn't happened yet, it's going to. Because the sorcerer said, if Eternia is dying with no magic, if Eternia dies, the rest of the universe dies. Like this is gonna spread. So it's very possible that this has happened and that Orko is in fact the last Trollan. And that leads him into a bit of a retrospective that takes a complete departure from everything we know about Orko. Which is very interesting because everybody else up until this point, there's at least been some basis in one of the canons. They pulled for, or many. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This one, as far as I know, is completely out of the blue. They retconned Orko's whole backstory. So, usually he is from Trala. He's a great sorcerer on Trala, usually known as Orko the Great. And, he was accidentally sent to Eternia. He got trapped in whatever dimensional portal and spit out on Eternia. Usually ends up saving Prince Adam, but finds out that his magic does not work as well on Eternia as it does on his home world. And that's what leads us to the comical effects, because Eternia is a different kind of magic. That's all gone. That's basically the basis of Orko, whether you're talking Filmation, the mini comics, 2000X leaned on it. But Orko throws us a new backstory where he was born and his parents expected great things of him because they were great sorcerers. And Orko says, that magic never came easy to him. Even on Trala, he was a mess up. He was a screw up. He's never been very good at anything he does. And so much so that his name isn't even really Orko. That his parents named him Oracle, but he couldn't say it. It came out Orko, and so that nickname just stuck because his parents were so ashamed that he did not grow up to become the all-wise, all-powerful Oracle that they wanted him to. And so basically he's just a disappointment, and he doesn't even really get into how he came to Eternia either. Just that, basically he's a screw-up his whole life. No one's ever cared for him, and the royal family's about the only family he had. So what do you think about his new backstory?
I think I should throw that at you more than me, honestly, because I know you, out of the two of us, is definitely your Filmation is definitely more your love than mine.
Yeah.
So for me,
like I said, even 2000X went with a version of that. Like that is basically Orko's accepted backstory with the first one.
What I'll say before I let you get into yours, and for me, it was, I was so into the story that I didn't even remember the initial origin for Orko until like after watching the show. And then I was like, oh yeah, they did change that.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. So here, what's your take on it being the Filmation guy out of the two of us?
I mean, obviously I prefer the original and the 2000X backstory. I think it's more unique. It's like the reverse Superman. Like on my home world, I am a god basically. But then I come to this planet where I can't quite get anything going. And like that's an interesting story. But he chooses to stay because he feels like this is where I need to be. These are the people I need to help. This is the battle I want to fight. I want to fight against Skeletor and his evil forces. I want to help, save the universe, but I have to do it on this planet, even though that means I'm weaker than I need to be. Like that's a story to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will say, kind of the same as you. Like I prefer that backstory, but with what they're doing in Revelation, the backstory, the perpetual screw up backstory works really well, and
Mm-hmm.
I get why they did it. Even though it's
Mm-hmm.
not my preferred, it makes sense here, and I understand what they were going for. Um, I still think it's an odd choice. Um, and obviously, the Oracle thing is tying back to the speculation that the Oracle that we saw in 2000X was actually an Oracle sent back in time.
Yep.
Um, and it'll be interesting to see if they play into that at all later on in this series.
Well, another way to look at it too is we already have seen Orko being where he is in life from the last episode, and he was
Yeah.
weak. He's basically on death's door.
Right.
He also talked about writing down your adventures with Andra on the boat in the last episode.
Exactly.
So there is a part of me that when I think about this in particular, it almost makes me go, is it maybe his own way that he looked at things? And because he's so where he is right now, where he really feels depressed, he's really down, that maybe he's looking at his entire life and thinking, I've always been this way, but maybe he wasn't. Maybe this is diluting how he felt about his childhood when his childhood wasn't as bad as he thinks it is or something. And maybe the fear part of being in Subternia in this moment is poisoning that too. That was something else that I was thinking once I remembered, oh yeah, his origins actually, he's a great sorcerer, Orko the Great and all that. I'm not trying to, because to me that's too much heavy lifting to go there.
Well, that's it. I think the fear might be building it up, like taking it over the edge.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's taking it from I was Orko the Great to I had trouble with basic spells in school. You know what I mean? Like that's too. But yeah, maybe it is like I could see it as his parents did still love him, still cared for him, like they, and that's something that we put on ourselves a lot of times. Like we feel like we're more of a disappointment to our parents than we actually are. So I could see that sort of thing. Like maybe his parents were just like, oh well, it's all right, Orko. It's you'll find some other path. But he really took it on too hard that he couldn't be the person his dad wanted him to be. And maybe Scareglow's fear is like bumping that up.
Yeah, well, the other thing about it too, and I'll be done with it at this point, is the part with him and Evil Lyn focuses on Orko.
Right.
It really goes after Orko. Evil Lyn, we don't know what her fear is, and my guess is she's past the point of where her fear is because she already lost Skeletor, she lost her home. She, there she is working with the good guys to fix what needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
And so I feel like she's already dealing with her worst fears versus Orko. He's now getting into the game. And I feel like there is almost this feeling in this episode that they decided Scareglow needs to really hammer in on Orko for the fact he, out of the two of them, has maybe the better chance of using magic because Evil Lyn is relying on that on her wand, on her staff, and that thing, it's by the day it's getting smaller and smaller with that little bit of magic the sorceress gave. So it's almost like Scareglow can go like, well, I know she's not going to be a problem. Her power is already weakening by the second, but if he ends up being out of my trance and out of the hallucination or the fear and all that, I have trouble now because he's magical, even though Lyn can use magic, Right. So in that way, I almost feel like it's almost like it's really pushing him to not be able to do anything and just sit there and be woe is me in a sense. And that's kind of how my head worked it out too. It's like, okay, and like, we'll see. I mean, honestly, it doesn't bother me they did what they did here, because for me, being who I am about Orko, it honestly made me root for him even harder with that story.
No,
and that's what the whole point is to me at this moment in particular.
No, exactly, and that's the thing. That's what I was saying. I get why they did it. It works here, even though it's not my preferred backstory.
Yeah.
But speaking of Evil Lynn, she is quite the pep talker in this. She really she really pulls Orko through this. You know, she's helpful, she's kind, she's compassionate, and to me, this fits right in with Evil Lynn, because Evil Lynn has always had that manipulative streak, and basically that's what it is. Like she can read people. She understands what they want. She understands what they need to hear, and she plays these roles. She plays Majestra. She's had all these disguises over the years. Like she is a manipulator, and so that actually, when she uses it for good here to get Orko up, it works. It's that same mindset, you know, the con artist. Like she knows what he needs to hear, and she delivers it to him, you know. But the other thing, you know, but she keys right in on that Oracle thing too. You know, when he says, you know, I couldn't pronounce my name immediately, she's like, you were named Oracle, weren't you? And again, I feel like there's something there. Like that wasn't just a throw, and especially the way Lena Headey. I always say it wrong.
I've been saying Heedy, but I've heard people say Heady as well.
But how Lena Headey delivers it, I'm like, there's a little something there. I don't know. Maybe it's just my mind wanting there to be something, a connection. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I think there's something with the Oracle thing that might come up.
The Oracle reveal, actually, I love that. That was one of my favorite moments between the two of them, because, like you said, it gave you that little, like, here's a strand to 2000X because of that, you know, King Grayskull, the power of Grayskull story and everything. And I mean, honestly, I've heard people talking about, you know, like Evil Lynn, and they're starting to crush on her now. I'm like, this is the episode where it starts happening, because suddenly you're not seeing her as someone that you're quite as, you know, looking over your shoulder and is suspect anymore. You're looking at her as someone who she is capable of compassion. She is capable of looking at you and being like, I believe in you in this moment. And you're like, but you're not supposed to be evil, but oh God, you're kind of hot now. Like you're the bad girl and you're turning kind of good. And it's kind of like, ugh. And I like it. I love it no matter what, because it's nice to see different sides of these characters. And they only let her have a couple of that in on the Filmation, the one with her and Tila, and even in the Witch and the Warrior. And then when they did the episode in 2000X that was showing her meeting Keldor for the first time. And I love that episode. I actually love, because for the first time ever, I was watching an episode going, I'm watching a romance, and it's not between the hero and his best girl. I'm watching a romance between the ultimate evil villain and the girl who finds that to be hot. And I'm like, that's awesome. You know, like, there's not a lot of stories that tell those stories. And then on top of that, to see how she is with Orko here, it's like, man, is she a multifaceted character like that? It's awesome to see it.
And that's it. But at the same time, there's still that, like, can we trust her? Like, that never really leaves, because
I love that.
We know her past. We know how many, and you're always sitting there as a viewer going, you know, and again, another thing this is how well this show is written, I don't have an answer for it. You know, but I'm sitting there going, okay, is she legit? Or is she really turning a new leaf? Is she really being compassionate? Or is she just like, hey, I need this Trawlin to get me out of here, so I need to fluff him up. You know what I mean? Like, that's never, you never know. It's just, but it's well written. The interactions between them are fabulous. So as they're talking, all of a sudden all these creepy little shadow Trollins appear like in the corners and everything. And they all converge on the spell spring and merge into a giant shadow beast who attacks Orko and Evelyn. They run off as it cuts back to Tila, who it is time for her to face her greatest fear. I love this. It's just this darkened room. You can only see Tila, and then slowly and creepily, the He-Man theme music, that transformation music, starts playing. But it's very slow. It's very I'm not a musician, so I can't explain. But it's got to be off key or something. Like they're just it's a twisted version of that He-Man transformation, as a red-eyed He-Man appears out of the darkness and stands in front of her. And forgive me if I get this a little out of order, guys, but there's a lot of cuts at this point. We're jumping back and forth. Back to Roboto and Company. Now there's not only are there the Shadow Beasts, but there's zombies. They're fighting. There's fire bats. They're just like anything and every creepy creature that you can think of in your imagination is being just unloaded on Android, Roboto, and Beastman. And they're doing their best to fight back. But even they notice, like, hey, the more fear we have, the stronger these creatures seem to be. Like, Andra's losing her cool. She is just like, I can't handle this. She's fighting with zombies and shadow beasts and fire bats, and you can see the sweat dripping down her face. But they realize, again, they're smart. They just don't know what to do about it because this is scary stuff here. Like, I am afraid, and they are feeding off that. They're getting stronger the more we beat them down.
Yeah. And was this the part, I want to say this was the part where Roboto is starting to open fire on the zombies, and like they're surrounding him, and he's knocking them, and then he's like shooting them. Excuse me, I'm sorry, you're going to want to seek medical attention. I just got such a kick out of that. It reminded me of the 2000X version in a way, because that would have been stuff you would have heard out of him easily. Right. And again, it's solidifying. As much as I wasn't a huge fan of him as a kid, I really dig Roboto now that I'm older, and I'm seeing that the dry personality, but there is a sense of humor if you want to see it, and it's there. So,
and he makes some nice comments, because they're talking about how they're feeding off fear, and Roboto's like, well, I'm not scared. I'm just a robot. I can't feel fear. It's just, these are my targets. I shoot them. Like, that's it's all objectives. It's ones and zeros to him. And so he's kind of the guy that and he brings it up a few times about how he can't feel fear. Take that. You know where to put it. Right in that back pocket. So at this point, let's jump back to He-Man and Tila. Oh, no, wait, sorry. We got Orko and Evelyn first. Evelyn's having a hard time with that magic. It's getting low. She's having a hard time focusing it. And basically, they're up against the wall here as this Shadow Beast is just ready to tear them up. Now we cut back to Tila versus He-Man. And it's pretty clear that this is Scareglow. He's just taking the shape. He's in her head. He's taking the shapes of what he needs to evoke the fear. He's trying some stuff out, and he lands on He-Man pretty quick that's bringing some fear. And he brings up a lot of things. He brings up her self-doubt, her feelings of inadequacy, her abandonment because she doesn't know her real parents. He states that, how's it feel to know that He-Man never trusted you like he trusted everybody else? And Scareglow is just kind of throwing things at the wall, it seems. He's just like, he's picking up these bits and pieces, like, what about this? I see you're an orphan. How about abandonment? Like he's, you know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
just throwing darts at the wall, and he's seeing
It-
what hits the hardest, and then he's kind of going down there, kind of almost like the Scarecrow, honestly. You know, Dr. Crane. Like he's very methodical about it. Like he's done this a lot before. He knows what he needs to do to get this fear out of her, and so he's very precise about it.
it also has that feeling of like fortune tellers to me.
Right.
Like they always say, if you give a little bit of like to something they say, then they know what to zoom in on. And that's the thing to make them look like they're right when they're telling you their predictions or whatever. So it has that vibe about it, and it makes them seem like a shyster then. And I like that about this moment, because he's doing whatever he can to survive, because like he said, he hasn't had a real taste of fear in a long time. And so it's like anything he can do to get through to her, he's going to use it no matter what here. And this moment in particular, if there was ever a moment in this entire show where you could see Kevin Smith's hands were on something, this for me was it, because this is the cave sequence from Empire Strikes Back, no matter what. It is, like Yoda telling Luke, you don't have to bring your weapons. And he goes in there and there's Vader, and it's just like that whole sequence right here. It's on a bigger scale, but here it is. The hero has to go up against the worst fears, and here you go.
But it's
what better character than Scarecrow for that too? So
it's kind of interesting in this situation, because as he goes on, he's actually kind of starts to have the reverse effect. Like this is, and we talked about this before. Tila has bottled everything up. She left the royal palace and she left all this behind. So she says, but she hasn't. She's carrying it. She's just not. She's not discussing it. Andrew knows none of it. She's not talking about it. She's not exploring it. But with Scareglow bringing it to the front here, and they're battling at the same time. That's the awesome thing. Like He-Man's got the sword. He's attacking her. She's like they're fighting. They're talking. But Tila starts to kind of work through some stuff. Scareglow throws out, He-Man didn't trust you. And she's immediately, because she's not thinking, she's not dwelling on it. So she's just going knee-jerk. She's like, he trusted me. He trusted me in every battle I was by his side. He trusted me with his life. And it's like, yeah, he did, Tila. Like, some of this is starting to get through to her, like, you know what? Maybe I haven't, explored this like I need to.
That's the fun part about this in particular, because it's like, when you have basically the bastardization of one of your best friends standing there in front of you, and calling you on your SHIT, basically, there is a part where it's like suddenly you're seeing it from you're seeing it with new eyes. And suddenly you're like, this person was this, and you will never know how. And I love how that part plays out here, because I love that he's thinking he's going to get everything he wants, and it's like everything you're doing is pissing her off. You're not, and it's not in the fear way; it's the she's going to kick your butt way.
That's it, and yeah, she's starting to gain a little bit more. He's getting strong because there is some fear, but she's fighting back. She's working through some stuff that she needed to work through.
He should be a psychiatrist.
And then that's what I was saying. It's like that doctor. It's like that psychiatrist, psychologist thing. But it ends up backfiring on him, because she actually gets the, because again, it all stems from the fact that she never got the chance to be mad at him. Take that, stick it in your back hoodie at this point, because we got so much stuff in our back pocket.
That's why I wore it.
That's the root of it all. She never got the chance to be mad at Adam. Because how can you be mad at someone who just gave up his life for the universe? Like you can't, like, it's your soldier spouse goes off and fights in a war and doesn't make it. Like, how can I be mad? He gave up his life for our country. Like, how can I be mad at him? But I am, because he left me. He left me here, and we'll get into that. It's coming. Don't worry, guys. Some good stuff coming. But finally he pinpoints out. He thinks he's got it. He senses something in her. and realize that the thing she's most afraid of, or what he feels, is her own fate. It's the same thing. It's that fortune teller thing. He realizes there's something off about her, and he realizes that it's troubled her for years. You know, he transforms into the classic looking Tila, and they keep fighting. But all that does is just push Tila over the edge. She's not angry anymore, or she's not afraid anymore. She's just angry, and she turns it all back on him. You know, she goes, yes, there is something different about me, and no, I don't know what it is, and but she drops these little things like the things I can do, and this and that. These little hints, like, hey, maybe she realizes more. Well, she doesn't realize more than we think, but subconsciously she knows there's something inherently different about her. Going all the way back to episode 1, where I said, I felt when the sorcerer sent that telepathic call to Adam, I felt she reacted in more of a way than just like, hey, Adam is looking like an idiot during my big ceremony, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think she realized those little things, like, yeah, sometimes I think I hear voices, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I was getting from. Again, it's very vague. We don't go into specifics, but it's enough to kind of kick Tila into this protective Super Saiyan mode. She's ringed in this rainbow luminescence kind of. Yeah, it kind of reminds of like episode 1 when the sorceress was using magic spells and barriers. Let's just say it reminds me of that. And basically, Tila's like, I'm not afraid of my destiny because only I can make my destiny. I am not locked into a fate. Like everybody seems to think I am. I do what I want, and she fights back. She goes full blast on Scareglow, and he is just knocked on his ass. And and at the same time, we cut back to the others, and this is helping the others break free. Once she starts fighting really against him in this way and taking control of her own fear, it's weakening Scareglow, and it's making it easier for the others to break out. Andra and Roboto, they hook up this bright flash of light that knocks them back. Orko's able to stand up to the Shadow Beast, and they break their illusion. And Tila ends up breaking, the illusion that they're alone, and they're all back in that first cavern. They haven't moved from the spots they entered Subternia in. And Scareglow's on the ground just cowering. And he's like, what are you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm your worst nightmare. And it's like, oh man, that moment, I was just like, I was out of my seat, like, yeah, get him, like, to see. I mean, let's be honest here, lay it all on the table. There's no secrets between us. To see her embrace those powers of the sorceress was awesome, and for her to drop those hints, like, yeah, I've kind of. Again, I don't think she's come to realization that it's a sorceress, but obviously she's realized throughout the years that there is something different about her. There is some magic in her. Like, she can do things other people can't, even though she doesn't know how to control her powers or where they come from. It's still her destiny. And to see her kind of come full circle and be like, no, this is me. Like, that was awesome. And culminating that moment with that score and the effects. Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, when we saw that thumbnail and that Netflix had, and it had her with the lines and all that stuff. There was, like, when I saw that, I'm like, well, that's how you're going to do it. Okay, But when you see it actually happen in the moment, obviously, in anything, it's about context. It means more when you get to that point. And I mean, how cool is it that we finally get to this moment, because we've never gotten her there ever. It's always just she's the sorceress's daughter. That's it. You never really got to play any further. Now the lid is off the sandbox, and we get to start going, ooh, let's start having a little fun in here with sorcerer's powers now and stuff. So yeah.
I was digging it. And she ends up just pulling the half of the power sword right out of thin air. You know? Like she's just like, nope, I'm taking this. Thank you. And she still doesn't trust Evelyn, because Evelyn comes right up. She's like, "Let me have the sword," and she's like, "No, I don't know. You've still got evil in your name, so maybe I'll hang on to it." And Evelyn's like, "Hey, do you know how to open a portal? No?
Yeah.
All right then, give me the sword. There's only one way out of here." And basically, they harken back to old vintage minicomic thing, like half of the power sword will lead you to the other half. And she uses a little bit of that magic to create a portal, and she called upon Zor as a deity. Like she invokes Zor to open this portal. So that was a nice little touch too, kind of tying in. I guess you call it the Eternity War canon, where Zor was kind of like one of the elder gods.
Yeah, and then, again, you know, I like. It's the whole hinging upon trust with this moment, and it plays out even further than this moment too for the end of this episode, because like the whole thing of, okay, Evelyn, what's the deal with her and all that stuff, like we were saying earlier. It's like, here's a moment where Tila is like, okay, fine, I'll trust you in this moment. You had Orko gaining a huge amount of trust for it. Even we skipped over that moment, but the whole, you know, no, I was called Evelyn. I added the evil later and all that stuff when they're having their talk about namings and all that stuff. And so, you know, it's kind of cool that, you know, we had all that time with the two of them, and through Orko's eyes in that moment, you're seeing a whole different side of her, and you're seeing him putting faith in her and her doing the whole, you can do this. And then to come out and it's like, yeah, Tila and her haven't had that. So, you know, but yeah, this whole bit now coming up is I think, out of all the episodes, this is probably my absolute favorite moment of the series to date. So I will stop now so you can get into that part.
Yeah, so basically she's opened up the portal to Preternia. We get this great view. You've seen it in all the promo images where it's a shot of the central tower and the tram and luscious golden fields everywhere. Unfortunately, she's doing this. Scareglow kind of rallies and creates a spell that anchors everybody except Orko to the floor. That's it. It's Orko's big chance. And he steps up. He takes him on. They're casting spells. Scareglow sending all these flaming skulls at him. Orko's bouncing them off. He's creating these rings to bind Scareglow. It's Scareglow versus Orko. Orko just buying them time. Tila breaks free. She goes to help Orko, and Orko tells no, Tila, go. I've got this. You guys get out of here. And he says he's not afraid anymore. And so as Tila's freeing everybody else, everyone's getting loose. Orko goes right up to Scareglow. He's got these binding rings that, you know, he traps around his chest and his arm, and he's casting one spell to banish him. He says, "Demon, be gone. Go back to your shadow." And boom! Orko and Scareglow disappear. The rest of the group is knocked through the portal, and as they look back, they just see the entire cavern collapsing. And as the portal closes, one frayed part of Orko's scarf floats through. And so that well, right off the bat, that's two more to the body count, I'm assuming. We're assuming that they have perished.
Well, as they say in sci-fi, unless you saw a body, just throwing that out there for the people who are out there in the various groups, R.I.P. Orko and everything. Like, I don't know about this one.
I don't know either, but for the moment,
let's add it.
Blasted to oblivion, so we're gonna add it. So we're at 7 now in 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of breaks Tila. You know, she was just starting to recover. She was realizing who her friends are, who her family was. She started calling Duncan father again. She's even getting less perturbed by Roboto. It was great to have Orko back. And losing him there, she turns on Evelyn. And she's like, she just straight up says, it should have been you. If someone has to die, it should have been Evelyn. Like, to her face.
Mm-hmm.
And Evelyn's like, I tried to help. Like, she's still having problems with that wand. You know, it's not working properly. That little ember magic is not giving her what she needs. And again, it's hard to tell with Evelyn. It's like, she seems sincere in her, like, I tried to save him. I tried to help out. But at the same time, it's Evelyn. So I never know who to trust. But as they're about to go at it, weapons are drawn. Looks like the alliance is over. It's going to be Evelyn and Beastman versus Andrew, Roboto, and Tila. And then Adam appears.
Mm-hmm.
And they all turn and look. And Adam exclaims, by the power of Grayskull?
Mm-hmm.
Credits.
Yep.
Bum, 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 bum.
And that last moment made me think of Hot Fuzz. No matter what, it because I absolutely loved in Hot Fuzz. Anytime Nick Frost was amazed by something, he'd always say, "By the power of Grayskull," you know. And even Simon Pegg even. Then he eventually says it as well.
When the DVDs are collection.
Exactly. And that was one of those moments when I watched it the first time. I actually cheered in the movie theater because I'm like, my God, they're referencing He-Man. How cool is that? And it was funny to hear Adam say it in that way for the first time. So, this was a heavy episode in ways I wasn't expecting it to be. Because the other thing too, in that final the final moments of that episode with the Orko Scareglow bit, that got me a lot. And like you were saying, do we trust Evelyn or do we not trust Evelyn?
Right.
There is a moment in that fight that I loved, and it was because he and her had that bonding time on Trala, and he's making the circles and the spells are floating around him, and he's not messing up. It's like, this is his moment. And he turns around, he's like, look, Evelyn, I'm doing it. And it's like, oh my God, you know, like I get chills even thinking of that, because he's looking at the villain who had faith in him, and he's proud of himself. And she's like, he can't do this alone. She raises her wand, and the wand won't work. It's not her. Like, she literally is willing to help him in that moment, and the wand just won't do it. And so it's like, you know, that whole sequence, it's like she really did try. And then when Tila does that, it should have been you. It's like, but we've seen she tried to help in that moment. It wasn't like she was making him fend for himself, but that's how it ended up being.
Right.
And I mean, that whole sequence, like, seriously, for somebody that was never a huge Orko guy, that thing just, like, over the top. Like, I love that little guy, at least in Revelation. I don't know if I'm still going to love him in the other iterations, but the way they did him in here, especially with some of the stuff I've been through in my life in the last 20 years, I identified so hard with him. That it really, really made me go, dude, I've been there. I can give you a hug. I get it, you know?
Right.
And the only thing I wish they would have added, and this is just me personally, and you're going to laugh when I say it, because I know you know where I'm going with this, is I really wanted to hear him right before he, right after he did the thing, probably where he's saying, "Look, Lynn, I'm doing it," and all that stuff, and having Scareglow, because there's that moment where Scareglow's walking against the wind to get at him, because he's targeting Orko. He's not targeting anybody. It's the whole you're messing this up for me,
right? Because he's got everybody else. Yeah,
exactly. He's got them where he wants them, but Orko's the one he can't peg down. And I just love that it would be like him using the fear and him coming at him. I wanted to hear Orko yell, "Not afraid!" like a Stanley.
Well, it wasn't quite like that, but he did say, "I'm not afraid." But yes, that was definitely.
I just wanted to hear that, because when he deflects that bolt from Shakoti in House of Shakoti Part 2, that moment to this day, I will be like, yeah, because it's like. It's such a big moment for that character. It's such a big moment as a kid watching that happen. And to see this with Orko, it would have been an awesome callback. But again, he did do a similar thing. I'm not going to give him too much crap. But, I mean,
I definitely got some vibes from of House of Shakoti with Orko at the end there. Like, he's like, "Nope, I'm good. I'm not afraid."
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was so good. And even... the Well of Darkness, that reminded me of that. That's the callback to Mike Young. That was where Tuvar and Badra tried to separate themselves, but ended up separating Eternia. So, and again, another callback, used in a slightly different way, but I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. It shows that you guys, at least did some research, and we're like, okay, well, we need this place. What can we use?
Yeah.
But yeah, this whole episode, and the thing is, the way we talk about it's the emotional stuff that got me, but it's not a slow episode. It is action packed. Like, all of this exposition and dialogue and character moments are coming while they're fighting these monsters and creatures and Scareglow and shadows and I mean, this episode just goes boom, boom, boom. It's actually one of the longer episodes they're getting, because there's a few minute variance between episodes, and these last two are definitely the longer end of the spectrum. It's like 26 and 28 minutes. So there's a lot happening, but unlike the Poison Chalice, where there's a lot happening and you feel like, okay, this is dragging, this one's like boom, boom, boom. And it's like, what did I just see? Like, these last two episodes are the ones I like. Every time I watch through, I see a little bit more or catch a couple more things, especially in these last two, because there's just so much happening so fast. But yeah, this one was amazing. The Orko and Lynn moments. And even that, like, so earlier, I think I skipped over, but earlier when Orko's like, "Can I call you Lynn?" And she's like, "No." And then later, like you said, when he's like, "I'm doing it, Lynn," and she's just like, "Yeah, you are, but yeah, call me Lynn. You earned it. Like, we've come through the other side." And again, I want to believe it's sincere, but it's still evil Lynn. We'll see.
But yeah, I will say, for me, like the first episode is almost its own entity compared to the four that follow it. And this one in particular was one where I almost like this storyline. It was packed for this episode. I don't know if I'd want more of everything that happened in this episode necessarily. Like, it was timed nicely for me to enjoy it.
The pacing was great.
The pacing was great. But the thing is, there is that part of me that goes, but this is the only time we've ever seen Scareglow in animated form. So there is a part of me going, I hope that's not the last time we see him, because he really was impressive. And like I said, the animation, you could tell they put some love into that one in particular. But yeah, this one blew me away by my emotional reaction the first day I watched it, because my daughter turned around after Orko and him disappeared. She turned around and then she looked back at the screen. And then later on that day, she goes, I saw you crying, right? And I go, how could I not there? And she goes, it's okay, Daddy. I actually was a little misty-eyed too. I'm like, she was like, it was Orko. She had that, like, if it wasn't Orko, if it would have been anybody else, it wouldn't have affected her. But she's like, Yeah, it was Orko. It made me a little misty-eyed too. I'm like, yeah, there you go.
And that was it. It was. And this episode I worried because the first time through I watched with my kids, and I was kind of getting a little nervous the first time through as some of the stuff started happening. Like, man, is this getting too heavy? But luckily there were some lighthearted moments in there. There's a couple Roboto and his medical attendant. There was a little.
Yeah.
They took that old school approach where they're like, hey, we need a couple things in here to kind of cut the tension a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It was very well done. Orko was a star of the show, and honestly, I'm just gonna leave it at this. So we're saying Orko and Scareglow are dead, but the last spell that was made before we disappeared, I'm gonna leave it here. Demon, be gone. Go back to your shadow. Okay, so you guys think upon that and what those words may mean, and maybe if they're not dead, maybe you can think of some places they might have ended up. So, all right, guys, we're going to take off here. Our official death count right now is sitting at 7. We're going to be back, hopefully in the next couple of days, to wrap this up with Episode 5, The Forest at the Forge of Forever. All right, guys, take care. And until next time, go watch Netflix.
Ba-boom.
Oh, come on. Ah, rock! Oh, bear. Oh, bear. Oh!